Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Thanks for joining us on another evolutionary adventure. Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and the X-Zone TV channel, divisions of Relmo McConnell Media Company, with studios and corporate offices in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. This hour will consider life in the afterlife. What happens when we die? It's something that happens to everyone, yet we seem to know little to nothing about it. With us this hour to delve into death, dying, and beyond is R. Craig Hogan. Craig is an acknowledged expert in the afterlife and afterlife communication, president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, co-founder of Seek Reality Online, and author of 8 books about the afterlife. His website, seekreality.com. Craig, thanks so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Gwilda, I'm delighted to be here. I'm anxious to talk with you and your viewers about the wonderful things we know today about the afterlife and communicating with the people living there.
It should be fascinating because it's something that we don't commonly know. I mean, it happens to all of us, like we said, but what does that mean? What happens? What happens?
So, it happens to the best of us.
So you have a PhD. What was your field of study?
My field of study was in training instructors how to teach. So I was teaching both elementary and secondary instructors and college professors how to teach in the classrooms.
There's a real skill set there, isn't there?
It requires much more than you'd expect. And most people don't realize how the intricacies of teaching can be fruitful or they can be miserable. So my job was to teach them how to be fruitful.
Fantastic. So how did you go from there to becoming interested in the afterlife?
Well, I turned 50, and when I turned 50, I started running into people who were psychics or mediums, and they just kept coming into my life. And so there was something going on there, and I realized it, but I didn't understand what it was. Then someone told me that I have psychic ability. A medium told me that. And she said, well, what I want you to do is I want you to go home, and I want you to hold a deck of cards in your hand face down on your palm. Take one off at a time, holding it face down on the other palm. And if it feels warm, then it's red. If it feels cold, then it's black. Then make different piles. And so I made piles of about 20, 25 cards. And then after I was done, then I turned the piles over, and every card in the black pile was black. Every card except one in the red pile was red. So I knew that I had psychic. It's called psychometry. It's the ability to hold things in your hand and get information about them without knowing what they are. And then I learned later on that I have remote viewing ability. I can sit in my office in Illinois and I can view something on somebody's desk in New Jersey or in California. It doesn't matter how far away it is. I instantly know what's on the desk and I can sketch it and send them the sketches. So when I realized that I had psychic ability, I knew there was much more to the universe than what we see around us in our day-to-day lives. And so I started delving into it, and I discovered that since the mind is able to do these things outside of the body, that means that the mind must continue after the body dies. And so I started to delve into the afterlife communication, and I've been devoting myself to it ever since, trying to help people to understand the greater reality, what we really know about life and about the afterlife.
Well, it seems like most people are really quite terrified of dying. What would you attribute that to?
That's out of ignorance. It's out of the people not realizing what it is. In the same way that we go from being a child into being an adolescent, from an adolescent being into an adult, we make the transitions easily and we don't fear them. In the same way, we shouldn't fear the transition when we go from this life into the next life. It's seamless, it's not difficult, it happens without thinking about it. There is no pain involved. And if people could just realize that all they're going to do is they're going to transition into the next stage of their eternal lives, then they would lose that fear. And our job is to help people to understand that, to realize the fact that they will continue after the body dies, and there's no need to fear death. And we can look forward to our reunions with our loved ones and the wonderful lives we'll have in the next life.
Do you think that the fear of death actually makes the death process more difficult and traumatic?
Yes, and it also makes it more difficult for people when they do make the transition, because when the people make the transition and they get to out of the body and they are still very much alert, they're completely alert. In fact, they're more alert than they were when they were in the body, and so they have it. Some of them have a difficult time understanding what happened to me. Why am I here? What is this place? I'm not in the place that I was before, and so they have a difficult time making the transition. And if people can understand the fact that they'll make the transition, things will be different but more wonderful. Then the transition won't be so difficult for them to make. But some people have a little bit of a difficult time. There are rescuers and their loved ones who come to them when they've made the transition, and they help them to understand what's happened to them. So there are people who will come to them and make a difference in their lives after they've left this life. But if people could just understand the fact that we are immortal beings, we are eternal beings having a physical experience that's going to be very short, and that when we make the transition, it's not any difficulty. There's no problem making the transition. And if they could realize that, then the transition would be much easier.
So you were speaking about the our loved ones that and helping spirits that come from the other side to help us.
Mhm.
What's your take on death doulas and people that work helping people across from this reality
I think
into
that
the next?
the death doulas do a wonderful work, and also the people who are trained in hospice about how to help with people. But we're still in a period of ignorance. We're still in the time when it's difficult for the hospice workers or for the death doulas to really talk about the life after this life, because there's a stigma against it, that people still don't understand it. So they're doing a wonderful work, and it's important that they help the people to make the transition, but they should be able to help them to make the transition from this life to the next life with an understanding of what's going to be happening after they make the transition. The focus on today in hospice and the death doulas is upon what happens at the point of the transition, but they don't go into what happens afterwards. And if they could just do that, then it would help people to understand the reality of what's going to be going on for them.
So what does happen after we die?
We'll go through a transition. It's an easy transition. We will simply fall asleep, is what it amounts to. It's the same as falling asleep at night. And there is no pain. No one ever feels any pain at the transition. But we make that seamless, easy transition that people often don't even realize what's happened to them. They wake up and they're just on the other side and say, well, the one person is described it from the other side as saying, well, I was there and then I was here, and I have no idea how quickly how that happened, but it just happened easily, and it was something a wonderful experience. And then when they go into the life after this life, when they may wake up in familiar surroundings, like a surroundings of a home that they grew up as a child, or they may then come into a place like a meadow. There's one story about a man who woke up under a tree, and he didn't realize what had gone on, but he got the idea that he was no longer in the earth plane. And then he saw somebody coming towards him. It was a horse, and he recognized it immediately. It was his old horse, Nellie, whom he had had when he was alive. And Nellie had died years before, and he just loved Nellie. And here comes Nellie walking towards him in that wonderful reunion, and he hugged Nellie, and that led him then into his life and the life after this life.
Within that, what can you tell us about the life review that so many people go through?
There are life reviews. There are life reviews that are described in near death experiences. And then there are two life reviews that happen after the person transitions to the next stage of life. Those are three life reviews, and they're all three different. The life review during a near-death experience is intended to teach people so that they can live their lives differently. They have their lives to go back to. They don't. It's only a near-death experience, so that after they come out, then they are changed people. The life review has helped them to see how their what they've done has have affected other people, about how their lives have been lived, and how they could do it differently. So that's one life review. The second is a life review that happens very soon after the person makes the transition to the next life, and it happens, and as it happens, then they see things happening in their life. They see the effects of what happened on other people, and they understand better what they were doing in their life. They grow from it. The purpose is to help them to grow, because we're always continually growing in love and compassion and understanding of who we are in eternity. And then the third life review happens sometime later, and it's an intense life review. In this life review, they become the other person in the interaction, so they feel the same feelings that other person felt. They have all of the same emotions that other person felt, and so they really understand deeply how what they did affected other people. So the third life review is very intense, and it is an emotional period of time, and they go through the major events in their life, and every one of them they learn what happened with other people, learn how to treat people differently, and then they continue through their continuing spiritual growth all the way through the rest of their eternal lives, in which they continue to grow in this way. And that's a valuable lesson from the life review that will make a difference for them in the next life and the lives after that.
We're about out of time in this segment, but you make it sound like you're like a dream in a way. But which is the dream, the life we're leaving or the afterlife?
And that's what they say from the other side. They say this life is not the real life, and they say the real life is the life that they enter after they leave this life. So they're saying this life that they're living now in their next life is the reality. That's the real life. This life that we're living right now, it's just like we're in school. So we're in a kind of an environment that is put together specifically to train us, to help us, but it isn't real life. When we leave school, then we go into real life, and that's the way that they describe it on the other side.
So who's they?
They are the people who come through. We have now hundreds of thousands or millions of people who have come through from the life after this life to speak to us. They come through mediums. They come through loved ones who have learned how to communicate with their loved ones on the other side. They come through people who have materialized in seances, and people who've come through in interactions with mental mediums.
Well, it is that time for that commercial break.
Mhm.
Craig and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. If death isn't the end, what is it? With us this hour discussing life after death is R. Craig Hogan. Craig, we were just getting into how you're gathering some information from the other side through mediumship and various ways. Are you collecting this information in a scientific data way?
Yes, we are. We know for a fact that we are communicating with the people living in the life after this life. We look at anything that we receive with some skepticism. We have to know that it's true. We have to know that it really is the person coming through. So some of the evidence that we have is the fact that the person on this side of life who is receiving the messages is aware of who they are. They know the personality. They know the individual in the life after this life, and so they can vouch for them when they come through. And the person in the life after this life coming through will describe things that are going on in the person on Earth's life, things that are happening contemporaneously with the person on this side of life, things that may have happened just a few hours before. There's one story of a woman who came through in a Leslie Flint seance. Leslie Flint was a medium in the 20th century, and he would have people come into the room and speak to their loved ones who were sitting in the room. And there's one story of a woman who said that she was with him, with her husband, who was sitting in the room, who was on this side of life, and she came through from the the afterlife. And she said, I was with you today when you were walking down the street and you saw a woman who looked just like me. And he laughs at that. And then she says, and you thought that she would be a wonderful woman to meet if she was like you, but you know she wasn't like you, so you went on. And he said, yes, that's exactly what happened. So she was able not only to be with him just before he came into that seance, into that room with Leslie Flint and him, and she actually knew what he was thinking. She was aware of his thoughts. And so we have these kinds of stories of people that we know prove the fact that that person living in the life after this life, who's coming through, who's speaking to them, is clearly them, and that they're with them all day long. Any day that they want to have the person with them, then they come to be with them. So we have the proof that that's true.
So, how many places are you collecting your data from? Is this something you do on a consistent basis?
We're collecting data from all of the sources, and the sources are coming out every day. There are new sources, but we have sources all the way back to 1848 when the spiritualist movement really had its start. And so we have all of the records since then. There are volumes and volumes, hundreds of thousands or millions of these records of people coming through. We make sure that they are verified, that these are, in fact, the people who came through because they have come through to loved ones. Once we have the data, we know it's them, then we will use that data. We also look for corroboration. So we not only want to get one person coming through from the life after this life speaking about the life there, but we want that corroborated by others who come through. We want the same thing. If one person says something and nobody else is saying it, then we can't accept that. But when we have repeated from other people, then we know that this is a truth about the life after this life and about our lives and what will happen to us once we leave this life.
So you triangulate the information for validity.
Yes, we make sure that everything that we receive is valid. And we make sure that the individual is known by people on this side of life, that there is evidence, such as we have evidence of people actually being able to see them, touch them, spend time with them, hold them in their arms, and even kiss them. And so we have the physical evidence that goes along with the evidence of what they've been saying, and we compile all of that. And when we know that this is in fact a person from a life after this life coming through, then we regard that as valid, and we use that in our understanding of this life and of afterlife communication.
Which brings me to another question. You
Mhm.
said that in afterlife we have solid bodies that would be as we would have been in our prime on Earth, our 20s or 30s. How do you know this?
We know it because the people come through and they will tell us, they'll describe what their bodies are like in the life after this life. And sometimes there will be images, visions of them when they come through to people on this side. And the visions or images will be of them when they were younger. One person said that, it looked like one of the old pictures of my grandma, that she came through. And I hardly recognized her at first, but then I recognized her and realized that it was my grandma, but she was in her 20s, and when she had passed away, she was in her 80s. And so that we realized that the body that we have in the life after this life is going to be what it was when we were in our prime. If a child passes, then the child will grow up on the life after this life until they come to that age. But we know for a fact that we have bodies just like we have here. People say to us when they come back that the life after this life is so much like the earth realm, except much more wonderful, much more beautiful, and without any of the negatives. And one of the things is these wonderful bodies that we can have, and we can have all the senses in the bodies. Anything that we want to have, we can eat, we can drink. People even describe smoking on the other side, smoking cigars, and they've even described having sex in the other side. And so we do have bodies, and the bodies are perfectly functioning just as they are here.
So where does reincarnation fit in all this?
People don't understand reincarnation. We're getting a very good view of reincarnation now. And as I said, we're getting this from many sources in the other side. They're saying that our understanding of reincarnation is coming from the Eastern religions, but we have to understand it differently. And what they're saying to us is that each one of us is part of a higher self. A higher self is a much greater self that has many individuals as part of it. The higher self with many individuals as a part of it is always growing, always becoming. And what will happen is the higher self, when it's planning a life, planning our life or planning someone else's life, when we're planning the life, then they will take pieces of lives from other people who have already gone through the earth plane, who've already lived and have gone on to the next life. And they'll take pieces from those lives or something that somebody didn't learn about, another life, and so then they'll make that a framework for the life of this person who's about to be born into the earth plane. But we as
So are
individuals,
they coming from the pool of the people that are on the other side, or just the experiences from the people on the other side?
it's just the experiences. So, in other words, it's the framework of the person, but not the individual. So, we as individuals will stay individuals. We will not change. We will not reincarnate. I won't come back as a Eskimo woman with 12 children or something like that. It wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be Craig if I did that.
Well,
What we.
if we do the
Mhm,
math, Craig,
mhm.
it's going to be starting to get pretty populated up there if we aren't recycling the ones that are there and keep adding to them.
Yeah, and if we can imagine, this is infinity. This is there are no bounds to this, and it's difficult. It would be difficult for someone in the 17th century to think about a world in which there are 800 billion people. That the or is it 8 billion? It's 8 billion people. But we know that that's true now. We realize that that's a truth. And the same thing is true about the life after this life. When we realize that there are so many people in the world, that's just imagine geometrically increasing that. So saying that it's 100 times that, or 1,000 times that, or 1,000,000 times that. And so then that changes our perspective on it. We realize that we could have any number of people living who have lived lives on the earth plane and now have gone on to the next lives.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Hmm.
If so, we die and we either cremated and turn to ash or we decompose and go back to the
Hmm.
soil. That's what happened to this physical body. So where did the physical body on the other side come from?
Yeah, the physical body on the other side is much the same as the physical body on this side. We know that our bodies are made up of atoms, and the atoms are essentially space, but are also made of energy. So at the root of it, at the root of who we are and what our bodies are, there is energy. And the energy then is what creates the atoms, which creates the body that we have. And in the same way, there is an energy in the other side in the next life. And this energy then creates a body in the same way as the atoms are created. And so we are bodies, we have energy bodies on the other side. And they are just as substantial as on this side.
So would in bilocation, okay,
Hmm.
oftentimes it's described as a person's essence collects the matter to it and creates a body in two
Hmm.
places at once. Is it kind of like that?
No, it's entirely different. We are entirely then in the next life, and by location, there's the individual is still the same individual, but just is having experiences in two different locations, having two different sets of experiences. And so, in the next life, though, our experiences are coming to us from that body that we have in the next life, and it isn't a bilocated body. It's the only body that we have there, and that is the body that we will continue with as we evolve and as we grow in the life after this life and become all that we're meant to become.
So when one of the people from the other side is communicating with us here,
Mhm.
they aren't experiencing time like we do.
They experience a sort of time. So, in other words, there are things that they can say that they have happened to them in the past, and but they don't have it. There's no sun, there's no moon, there's no year, there's no month, and they don't keep track of time. They don't have watches. If they're going to meet someplace, then everybody says, "Well, we'll meet when the person who's organizing it decides that we're going to meet," and so that person sends out a thought to all of the people who are going to meet, and they meet at that time. But there is no time in the way that we have it here with watches and days and nights and years and so forth. So it's a different kind of time, but it is a sort of time because things change, things evolve, things become. We have memories of things that we would say were in the past. So all of these things are happening that to us that are happening in the past. And so we must realize that these are the ways in which they are going to be going on.
So we're about out of time in this segment, but is
Mhm.
it kind of like a form of telepathy when the people on the other side are communicating with us here when they're moving through a medium?
Yeah, it is telepathy. So we're getting the mind to mind. In other words, we're communicating with our minds and not communicating with bodies. So that is the difference.
So the information comes through, and does the medium kind of hear it in their own mind's voice, if
Yes,
you
right.
will?
In their own mind, they hear it in the space where they get their voices. They hear it. So that's where it is.
So, but there's also apparently a visual that goes along with it, and that's how we can tell that they are
Yes,
of.
and we can get visuals of it as well. That's true.
But is that? But it's still just kind of a mental
It's still
visual.
a mental visual, right?
Gotcha. Well,
Okay.
it is time for that wonderful break. Craig and I will be right back to continue this discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Well, when we're talking about death, what about heaven and hell? We're speaking with the author of 8 books about the afterlife and afterlife communication, R. Craig Hogan. His website, seekreality.com. So, Craig, what about heaven and hell?
Well, those are good questions. And we know traditionally that people believe that there is a heaven and that there is a hell that comes out of primarily the Judeo Christian belief system. There is a heaven of sorts. In other words, we go into the next life, and it's a wonderful life. It's sometimes called Summerland, and also called Level 3. And it's a wonderful life that we'll be living there. And so we could think of that as being like a heaven. But there is no hell. That was a mythology that was developed by the early church. It was developed to keep their parishioners in line. It was borrowed from the pagan belief systems. There is no hell. We receive that message 100% from the other side, that when they come through, they say there is no such place as hell. Don't worry about it. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be going into that place that is much like heaven. It is Summerland. It is a place where you will recuperate, and then you will be with your loved ones, and you can live there as long as you want.
What happens when you decide you don't want to live there anymore?
Then you can go on to the next level.
Oh, there's
And
levels.
there's next level, and you'll continue to grow. So in other words, you'll grow through the levels until you become a celestial being. You become a being of light, but you still retain your individuality. You still stay the individual whom you are. And so then we will go into the next life, and we can live on. We have one in a book called Life in the World Unseen by Anthony Borgia. There's a man that comes through and says that he's been living in Summerland for 1,000 years. And so you can stay there as long as you want with your loved ones. And when you stay there, you may do anything that you want. You may enjoy yourself, and you may grow. People love to grow because they become more loving and compassionate, and therefore they have better relationships with other people. And that's the way that they grow.
So when people start walking up the ladder, if you will, into the
Mhm.
levels, do they get further and further away from contact with this earthly realm? I mean,
Yes.
does it translate at
Yes, it
all?
does. It does. They get further and further away from it. Actually, they begin they're distancing themselves from the earth realm pretty soon after they go into the next life. When they go into the next life, they may at first want to eat and drink, for instance. They may want to wear the clothes they had when they were on the earth plane. And so then they want that bit familiarity that they have with the earth. But then they pretty well grow out of that. And after a while, then they don't feel the need to eat. There is no need to eat. There's no need to drink. There's no need to sleep. All of these things that carried on from the earth plane gradually fall away. And then over the next millennia that they live in the life after this life, then they'll continue to drop off things about the earth plane. Eventually, they don't need a body at all. So then they will live their lives without a body in perfect communion with all of the other entities, all the other people who are living in the life after this life. So there is a gradual distancing from the earth plane as we live in the life after this life.
So I have to ask this one.
Hmm.
So let's say I'm married and I'm
Hmm.
widowed,
I know what you're going to
and
ask.
then I'm married, and then I'm widowed.
Yeah.
Okay, when I cross over, who am I
Hmm.
married to?
You may live with anyone that you want to. You may live with both or all of the partners that you
Oh,
had,
that could be kinky.
or you may live with none of them. It's up to you. So it's much like on this side of life. You decide who you want to live life with. And on the next life, though, there will be some people who will be disappointed. So that you may want to live with someone, but they don't want to live with you. And so you have free will. You make that choice. And so you don't have to live with them. You may choose to live with one of them, both of them, or none of them in the life after this life.
Well, we've all had dealings with unpleasant people, that.
Hmm.
So what happens when we bump into them? Can we just go, yeah, later?
Yeah,
Don't want to talk
yeah,
to you.
yeah. Well, you don't bump into them. So if
Oh, really?
there's someone you would rather not see at all, then you will never see them, and you don't have to ask for it. This is not a request that you make. The things that happen in the life after this life are because of our state of mind. So if we want something to happen or don't want something to happen, then it simply happens just because that innately inside of us we don't want or we want something to happen. And so then we will not see that person unless we would like to see them. If we would like to later on somehow reconcile with them, then we can simply want to be with them, and instantly we will be with them, and then we can converse. But otherwise, if we don't want to see them, if they were abusive especially, then we will never see them in the life after this life.
So it sounds like the manifestation that we're somewhat capable of in this life
Mhm.
is amped up in the next. In other words, our will, our intention create the push pull and what we experience and what we don't.
Yes, that's right. So all of the things that we're experiencing here, this they've called this the nursery. So in other words, we're acquiring our personalities here. We're becoming the people who we are. We have our likes and our dislikes, and our affect that we get from the earth plane, and then we carry that into the next life. And then as we're living our lives there, then we make use of that. We have the same attitudes, the same feelings, the same likes and dislikes, and we carry that through, and we then evolve from there into being the people that we will become in the same way that we evolved from being an infant to a child, from a child to an adolescent, from adolescent to an adult. The same way that we evolved and we became different people in each one of those stages will continue to evolve in the life after this life.
So it doesn't sound like it gets boring.
Never boring. Always experience. And there are many exciting things that happen there. We can relive experiences that we had in our lives. We can't actually go into the earth life and change it, but we can relive what happened in exciting experiences in our lives. And we can go any place. There are marvelous scenic areas. There are mountains and rivers and oceans and beautiful places to go. There are fields of flowers and flowers that are much larger with more vibrant colors than we can imagine on this side of life, and we can go through any of those experiences, and we can do those with our loved ones, and so we can have parties out there in the meadows of these wonderful fields, and so it's an exciting life, and it never becomes boring.
So if we're enjoying these experiences, are we actually creating them like a holodeck?
Yes, we're creating them, but when we say that we're actually creating this life as well, we're creating the life that we're in right now.
Mhm.
But when we say we're creating, it's not creating in the sense of, well, I'd like to have a fudge sundae right now. I we're not going to be creating like that. We're creating because of what we expect to happen. So if we expect to have food in the life after this life, there's just food there. It's just in the location where we live. If we expect to be able to smoke a pipe, there's a pipe there, and we can smoke the pipe in the next life. All of these things that we expect to have happen are simply there. And so we are creating that life with other people, in concert with other people, through our thoughts and our expectations and our desires. But we're doing the same thing here. So this life is a life we co-create. and we create it based on our expectations and what has gone on before us. All of the people who've gone on before us have created this, so we have the expectation that life is going to be of a particular way now, and so it is that way. There are houses, and the houses stay there because we expect them to be there. So we are creating this reality together, and in the same way, we will create the reality on the next plane of life. And there are millions of realities, millions of groups of people who are living together, who are living in their own special realities.
So if we're going someplace, right?
Hmm.
So we leave this life and we
Yeah.
go to another one, and it's an
Hmm.
actual place.
Hmm.
Where is it?
Well, it's a different vibration. It's a different focus. So, in the same way that if we were standing in the middle of a field and when we looked one direction and we saw sunsets, and we looked another direction and we saw a mountain, and all we're doing is changing focus. We're in the same spot. We're not moving, but we're just changing focus. In the same way, we change focus when we go to life after this life, so that we have that focus then on, and everybody shares that focus. So we're all in the same mental focus in the life after this life. And we can do some of that now. We can actually go into our meditations, and we can go into seances, and we can have experiences of some of the things that happen in these other lives and in these other places. So we can do a little of that now, but when we go into the life after this life, we will be co-creating our reality with the other people who are of like mind, the people who are similar to us. If we were Eskimos, then we will come into the next life, and we will realize we will have environments that we understand, that are like the environments we had on the earth plane. Or if we lived in the Sahara Desert, then we will enter into a life like that in the next life. But it's not because we're asking for it. It simply happens because we expect it. We want life to be like this.
So do we then evolve beyond the limiting environment that we wake up in, if you will?
Yes, then eventually, then we will evolve out of that. We will spend our time in there as long as we want to, and we can change that environment. We can decide we want to live someplace else, but then we will evolve to the point where we don't need that Earth-like environment anymore. We will evolve into a life in which we have more of a mental life with each other.
So there's a lot of traditions and personal experience, quite frankly, where
Hmm.
their helping spirits have come from the other side, and they were alive at one point in this reality, like grandma comes to help or whatever.
Hmm.
How does that operate, and what happens when they get ready to evolve?
Yeah, and people are always evolving, and one of the things that they're doing when they're evolving in the next life is they're able to come back and help people on this life. So that's part of their evolution. It's part of their growth. In the same way that we had growth on this side of life, they're growing, and one of the things that some of them will do is grow by helping people on this side. So they might come down, and might spend time with people, and they might help them when they make the transition to the next life. And it can be a loved one. So it can be grandma who's taken on the role of helping us. All of the people in the life after this life are continually communicating with us. They're continually helping us. We just don't realize that that's true, but they are continually helping. And so when they come into the life from the life after this life into this life, then they can choose to spend time working with an individual, a family member, a young child who is becoming adept or becoming a prodigy, and they will come in and they will work with them and help them. But it's part of their growth, and it's part of becoming the person who they spiritually will become in their eternal lives.
So they're kind of like doulas of their own, aren't they?
Doulas of their own. That's
Hmm.
that's a good analogy, because of the fact that you do experience these things with the person on this side of life. So, a musician who has found a child who seems to have some abilities may come from the life after this life and help the child on this life to acquire the abilities to become adept at being able to use an instrument, or being able to to create a symphony, or helping other people on this side. So
You see,
they
it's that magic moment. I'm sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
but we
Mhm.
have to take another station break.
Mhm.
We will continue to explore death, dying, and beyond. So stay with us. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. According to Ben Franklin, nothing is certain except death and taxes. Was he half wrong? We're continuing our discussion with R. Craig Hogan. Craig, when we're living in this life,
Hmm.
and there are many of us that try to continue to evolve, and that's what this program is about, right? Is
Hmm.
tools to continue to evolve. Is there an ascension that can happen where you evolve beyond this life without physically dying?
No, there isn't such an ascension. I know that some of the religions have suggested that that's true, but there is, as far as we know, no ascension from this life into another life. But one of the things that does not happen is that we don't take our bodies with us. So, in other words, we're going to leave our bodies behind. We won't ascend using these bodies. What will happen is when the body stops functioning, then we will transition into the next life as a change of focus, and then there we will take on the environment of the next life, the body in the next life, and all of the other things having to do with it, and we will leave behind everything having to do with this life. So there wasn't an ascension as such, but then we go on to the next life with as the person whom we are, with all of the loves and attitudes and personality and memories that we had. And so, in that way, we do ascend as we are, but only with our minds, not our bodies.
So, what about the archangels, that sort of thing? Where do they fit in here?
When we think of archangels, we think about beings that have wings and are very masculine and very feminine in their looking, and those are outgrowths of the religions. They believed that the heaven was in the clouds; it was in the air, and so you had to have wings if you're going to get around in the air. And so they added wings. But the people who are angels or archangels and helpers and guides, all of these people are very much, if we see them, if we have a vision of them, they're going to look just like other people. So they're going to be individuals. When we see our guides, for instance, if you see your guide, my guide, or my angel, my guardian angel, when I saw what he looked like, he had buckskins on. His look was very much like a frontiersman, and I wasn't expecting that, when I saw that image. But when I saw that image, he looked just like any other individual. My guide, my primary guide, is a woman. Her name is Marion, and she just looked exactly like a normal woman, except that she had wonderful, long, flowing gown, and she was beautiful, and she had all of the sympathies and all of the love that you could expect in her smile towards me. So all of these are going to be, if we have visions of them, they're going to be like real people. They're not going to have wings.
Rats. I was hoping
Mm.
for a ride.
Yeah. Yeah, you won't have to ride.
So, how is it decided who gets to help who?
We decide. We have free will. And so then we, on the next plane of life, if we decide we would like to come back and we'd like to spend time on the earth plane with an individual to help them, then we make that decision. There may be somebody who, in their life after this life, who is working with us, who might say, there's a man named Abraham, and he's down here and he's struggling. He could use some help. Do you think that you would want to help him? So there may be suggestions about people, but we make the free will choice about who we want to come back to spend time with, who we want to love, and who we want to help in the earth plane.
So, what about prayer? Okay. How does that interface with the other side?
Well, what they say when they come back from the other side, they say that the prayers of the people on this side for them have a tremendous effect on them. So they have the effect on them, not in the sense of supernaturally making something happen on the other side. What they do is they come to that person, and that person is uplifted by them. They're changed by them. The love that they get from other people who are praying for them on the side of life, that has an effect on them. And so then they want to receive those prayers. They want to receive communication from us in any form that we can send it. So if we just talk to the person we love who's living in the life after this life, then they will get our words. They will get our prayers. They'll get our feelings and our sensations because they are one with us. So they will get things in a telepathic way, in a sensual way, in a way that we can't imagine here, but they will get them. And so they're anxious for us to communicate and for us to send prayers in their direction.
You mentioned some things that events that we can expect to have happen when we're getting ready to transition. We're alive, living our life, but then something
Mhm.
starts to change. Would you mind describing that for us?
Sure. For people who are in bed, who are bedridden, who are going to be passing from a deathbed, then there will be visions that people will receive, and this is predominant. Most people receive them, and the visions are of loved ones who are living in the life after this life, who've already made the transition, and they're coming back to help the person who's bedridden, who's on their deathbed, to make that transition, to take them into the next life. And so you'll hear stories from hospice workers about someone who is continually looking up in a corner of the room and raising their hand and talking. People who are about to make the transition will talk to people living in the life of this life. And the people who are in the room with them don't understand. They think they're hallucinating, but they're not. They're seeing that person. They're coming back to help them, and then they help them to make the transition. They help them to go over from this life into the next life.
There's been reports that I've run across of hospice workers and others that are in the room with a person that's getting ready to transition, but
Mhm.
actually see the
Yes.
ones that come to help. What's going on there?
Yeah, there's a phenomenon called a shared death experience, and actually, Dr. Raymond Moody, who penned the book Life After Life, in which he coined the term near death experience, and he wrote a later book in which he describes shared death experiences. And in shared death experiences, the people in the room actually share that what's going on with the person who is making the transition. One person described being caught up as he was with that person. He was feeling like mentally he was caught up with the person, and he actually rose with him out of the room, and then he had to come back, but he had that experience. Another experience in which the people in the room, there was as the person made the transition, there was a brilliant flash of light, and everybody saw it and everybody remarked about it when the person made the transition. It is a sacred time. It is a holy time when we're being born into the life after this life. It's a wonderful time. And so then people in the room with the person may have profound experiences of that person's crossing.
I love the way you said being born into, because that's
Mm.
always what's kind of reminded me of is we're born into this world and then we're born out of it.
That's
And
it.
it's a process in both cases.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's the analogy is the butterfly. The death of the caterpillar is a tragedy for the caterpillar, but it's a rebirth. It's a beginning for the butterfly, and so we mustn't see it as being a tragedy, because it's not a tragedy. It isn't where a person is not lost. We shouldn't refer to people as lost. I lost my husband. We shouldn't be using that word at all, because they simply have made a transition. They're still there. They're communicating with us. They're anxious to be with us, and they will spend time with us. And they're looking forward to when we have that reunion on the same plane of life.
So it's time in the show, Dr. Hogan, when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
My mission in life is to help people to understand that there is nothing to fear about making the transition. We needn't worry about when we come to the end of our lives and we're going to make the transition into the next life. We needn't feel like our loved ones are lost, that they're gone, that we're not going to see them again. They are with us. We are going to be meeting them again. We're going to have a wonderful reunion when we get to the life after this life. And we should all be looking forward to that time, that normal, everyday, natural part of our lives when we go on to the next stage of our lives.
That's a beautiful mission and it's
Mhm.
much needed.
Mhm.
So tell us about your experience with afterlife communication.
Well, I learned early on that I can have afterlife communication with my loved ones, and so now we know the fact that there are studies in which 98% of the people have had afterlife communication with their loved ones. And so I have learned how to do that through automatic writing, in which I write down ideas that come to me as fast as I can write them down, and they're coming from the other side. And I've had experiences in which I've sat in seances with physical mediums where I've had a person from the life after this life come and put their hands on my head and talk to me, stand in front of me and talk to me, and wonderful experiences. So the more that you're open to it, the more you can see these things happening, the more they'll come to you. There are wonderful experiences to be had in the life after this life communication. All we have to do is to be open to it.
So, is there a way a person can be trained to be more sensitive and open to it so that they
Ye-
can visit with their loved ones? I mean, we all would love to do that, I'm sure.
Yes, in fact, we have developed a protocol at seekreality.com. Seekreality.com has a protocol in which we train people how to have their own afterlife communications. It's free, it's online. People just sit down and go through the training, and they will become more sensitive. They will become more understanding and be able to receive these messages that are coming to them all the time from loved ones living in life after this life. It's something that can be trained. Psychotherapists are putting people into a state of mind to have this experience, and they're having their communications, and mental mediums are available, and they can be given readings over the phone, and we train people in how to do it themselves. So there are many opportunities for people to communicate with their loved ones living in the next life.
Mm. And Craig, where can people find your books?
My books are, you can find them at seekreality.com. seekreality.com, and there is information about the co-founders. I'm one of the co-founders, and it has a list of all of the books that I have written, and also on amazon.com. Just put in a search for my name, R period Craig Hogan, and you'll find the books there.
Well, we're just virtually out of time. Would you quickly tell us what's your vision for the future of the crossing?
Yes, we look forward to the time when everyone realizes that we are eternal beings having a having a physical experience, and that we will continue after this life, and it becomes commonplace, and people talk about it openly. They talk about the breakfast table. It's a common thing for people to realize, and that's the mission. That's the vision for what life can be like.
Well, we are out of time. Craig, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Our guest this hour has been R. Craig Hogan. He's president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute and author of 8 books about the afterlife and afterlife communication. To find out more about Craig and all he has to offer, visit his website, seekreality.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to a rapidly evolving world.